Oke, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Thanks God. Today we can meet again in the subject, in the course of interdisciplinary approach to the history and history education. I think it is the new subject for me. And as Prof. Didian explained last week, that interdisciplinary approach is very important for the history and history education, because as we know that history and history education is the uniqueness discipline. Meanwhile, in the study of science, we want to not only uniqueness or particular event, but also we want to find out the pattern or the general pattern or the conclusion. Because of that, this is needing to approach from other social sciences and humanities, including also auxiliary science, in which will be assisted the history and historical discipline. Prof. Didin also last week have explained you about the definition of what kind of disciplinary, what kind of cross-discipline, what is meta-discipline and others. Today, I would like to stress again about the importance of social sciences, auxiliary sciences, and others in assisting the discipline of history and history education. Because of that, allow me to share screen with you about the what is interdisciplinary approach in history and history education. Okay, so firstly, if we talk about the history and history education, in my mind, in my opinion, I think it is the similar, because historical study is the profession for the historian. Meanwhile, the history educators, including also the teachers of history, also teaching or explaining about the history result or history findings. Because of that, in my opinion, history and history education is similar. Because of that, interdisciplinary approach in history education, for me, also similar with the interdisciplinary approach for history discipline. Okay, so let's not be separated between the history as discipline in one hand and history education in others. So for me, it is the similar between historian and history educator, between the historian and what is history teachers. For me, is the similar. Okay, let me see about what is the historical event. Okay, so history discipline concerned about the historical event in the past time, in which the historical event is uniqueness, just one time, and there is no repeat. So it is the characteristic of the history discipline concerning about the event or the human mankind activities in the past, and its characteristic, the event and the activities of human mankind is uniqueness. Because of that, history discipline and history education be categorized as the ideographic. What is ideographic? It is the specific science or science concerning on specific event just individually and a uniqueness in matter. So ideographic is the uniqueness science. Meanwhile, in the development of science, we want not only the uniqueness or specific science, but should be general pattern. Because of that, there's the nomothetic science. What is nomothetic? Nomothetic is science in searching about the covering model or covering law or generalization, general law, and want to find out about the pattern, about the regularity. I think it is the concern about the nomothetic as the science that's concerned in general pattern, in regularity, as the contradict or different with the ideography. So if we just study about the history concerning on a specific event or uniqueness event, it is just a study for the past time, not relevant with the current situation, because historical event just one time, just one uniqueness. Meanwhile, we want to study history in order relevant with currently situation. We want to know about the general pattern. Because of that, we need not only ideographic from historical study, but also nomothetic, who concern or science who concern with the finding out or searching about the general pattern. You understand? Okay, so I think it is a differentiation between the nomothetic and the ideographic. Ideographic is similar with historical study. Meanwhile, nomothetic is similar with the social sciences and other sciences who or that concern, that searching with the general pattern, with the generalization, with the regularity and so on. Okay. So I think in this context, we need the nomothetic science in order the historical study not only concern uniqueness and one time, but also there's the general pattern. Okay, so actually in studying of history, historian ourselves always borrow the auxiliary science for history. For example, auxiliary science for history, for anthropology, for archaeology, for iconography, for numismatic, for ethnology, for paleontology, for epigraphy, crabology, geology, philology, and so forth and so on. Why the historian should be borrowed the auxiliary science? Because if we talk about the history in the past time, in the old period, for example, we should be now about the auxiliary science who concern about the society or community in the past time, in the old time. For example, from anthropology. If we talk about the history in the pre-history, for example, uh, uh, it, as we know that the human mankind who live in the time of prehistory, uh, uh, in prehistoric side, the human mankind who live in that period, what is life in firstly food producing, secondly hunting, and firstly the food gathering, secondly is hunting, and thirdly is food producing. I think it is not what is finding from historian. The three pattern that the human mankind in the prehistory alive in the food gathering, in the hunting, in the food processing, it is the research result from the anthropologists. So anthropologists conducted the research in the primitive culture, in the primitive community, maybe in Africa, in Asia, in others, find out that primitive culture, primitive community in the old history life in three phases: food gathering, food what is hunting, and food processing. So it is the auxiliary science from anthropology contribute to the history. So if we talk about in the time of prehistory, zaman prasejarah, no? Do you know? So it is the opinion from the science of anthropology or from anthropology in assisting the historical explanation that human mankind in the time of old history, they live in three patterns: food gathering, hunting, and food producing. So in this context, anthropology assisted the history discipline to explain about the how human mankind in the time of old history, in ancient history. Okay, including also the historian or the history teacher uh, uh, assisted by archaeology, for example. If you go to the temple, for example, or there is the site uh, uh, in historical site, and there is no information about the historical site or about the temple. As historian, as history teacher, we don't know. We didn't know about how, why, when, and others about this historical site. In this context, archaeologists can explain to us, can explain to historian and history teacher that this temple was, for example, 1,500 years old. This temple or this historical site built in 2,500 years old. So because archaeology now about the method how the old this historical site. For example, there's the what is the old of Pithecanthropus erectus. For example, historian or history teacher didn't know when, how the Pithecanthropus erectus alive. But archaeology, for example, including also geology now, because they have the method what we call as the carbon 14, a 14 carbon method. So to know the art of the historical site. So in this context, history teacher or historian also assisted by auxiliary sciences. In this context is archaeology, including also geology, philology, and so on. So historian is not expert in at all, including also history teacher. So in the context of an ancient history or the old history, a historian and history teacher what is assisted by many auxiliary sciences, for example, from anthropology, from archaeology, for epigraphy, for geology, for philology, and so on. Uh, uh, for example, in the time of in the context of Indonesian history, in the time of Hindu Buddha period, for example, they asked to find out for what is historical sources related to the Hindu time or Buddhist time, in which the script in the Pallava or Sanskrit language. It is just philologists who know more about these sources. Historian or history teacher didn't know about the Sanskrit, what is transcript or Sanskrit language or Pallava script. So because of that, philology or archaeology, they can explain about the what really happened in the time of Hindu Buddha's period. So it is one of the example. It is the many example about the how auxiliary sciences what is assisted or assisting the historian or history teacher, particularly when we talk about in the ancient history or the old history. Okay, so it is what is very important, and in the early period, historian or history teacher ourselves many assisted by auxiliary sciences, particularly from anthropology, from archaeology, from epigraphy, geology, philology, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's we see how about the modern history. Okay, in modern history also, if history discipline wants to match the general pattern, wants to make the generalization, I think history discipline should be also assisted by social sciences that's concerned in the general pattern, in the regularity, in the covering law models, and so on and so forth. In this context, as we know that in history discipline, there's the heuristic, there's the critiques, there's the analysis, and the historiography. In historiography, in order the history discipline, not narrative matters, not what is chronological matters in explaining something, should be assisted by social sciences, for example, sociology, political science, economic, geography, what is law, and so on and so forth. So if for the ancient history, historian and history teacher assisted by many auxiliary sciences, for example, anthropology, archaeology, epigraphy, geology, philology, and so on. In modern history, I think historian and history teacher should be what is borrowed or should be assisted by many social sciences from sociology, from political sciences, or economic, or geography, or law, and so on and so forth. There's many examples about the modern history, especially in historiography, from historian assisted by social sciences. As I have introduced you previously in last week, I mentioned about the Sartono Kartodirjo dissertation about the Peasant Report in Banten in 1888. The Peasant Report in Banten. Sartono Kartodirjo, in his dissertation, in his PhD thesis, assisted by the sociology, in which in explanation about the historical event in report of patient in Banten, Sartono analyzes with the sociological approach. Because of that, according to Sartono Kartodirjo, the unrest of peasant or what is report of peasant in Banten is not only uniqueness for Banten community in 19th century, but also the phenomenon like the Banten peasant can be occur in other place around the globe, around the world, by what is borrowing the sociology approach. Maybe you also have read about the what is Denis Lombard's book, Historian for France. His book is very what is familiar for history student. Lakaper Jawa, Nusa Jawa Silang Budaya, translated to the bahasa Indonesia. In his book, Denis Lombard borrow or assisted by approach from geology or geography, in which for Denis Lombard, if we want to understand about the historical event in Indonesia, according to him, should be borrow the geology approach, in which the currently period is the currently situation, like the globe, like the what is Earth in geography, in which the outer of the globe is the currently situation. Because of that, in making the periodization, in studying the history for Denis Lombard, the chapter 1 is the currently period. So not in the past period or the old period. As we know that in tradition of historical discipline, if we talk about the history, because as the chronological matters, the chapter 1 always in the ancient period. You know, it is also the what is the history subject in junior and senior high school, that in class 1, the student always study about the ancient history, the old history, zaman prasejarah, zaman kuno, and so on. I think because it is the chronological approach. But for Denis Lombard, student or history teacher should be aware that what is the first chapter should be in currently period, in modern period. So the approach is not chronologically, but what we call as the flashback from currently period to the past period. Meanwhile, in chronological matters, in historical study conventional, they are from the past period to modern period. But for the Denis Lombard's book, he studied about the history in Indonesia from the modern period and then back to past until old period. So I think in this context, Denis Lombard, assisted by the geography approach or geology approach. You also can find out many historiography or the work of historian in which using many what is social sciences in approach or in study of history. Okay, hopefully you understand about the why this subject about the interdisciplinary approach in history and history education. Because firstly, history and history education just concerning in uniqueness event. Meanwhile, as the human mankind, we want to know about the general pattern. We want to know about the generalization. Because of that, it is not enough. If we just study in historical style, in what we call as the ideographic science, but should be assisted by nomothetic science. In the ancient history, in the old history, historian and history teacher assisted by auxiliary sciences, such as anthropology, archaeology, epigraphy, geology, and so on. And in modern history, historian and his teachers also assisted by social sciences and other sciences in assisting in order the historian and history teacher can explaining historical event in general pattern, in generalization. Okay, so I think it is my lecturing today in second meeting. Hopefully all of you understand. Okay, because of that, I would like to share with you or inform to you about your task, your obligation. Okay, so what kind your people, individual people, should be made in one semester. So I think it is good idea for you if you make the poor people. Firstly, please you choose about the historical event or historical figure, and then you should analyze this historical event or this role of figure in history by assisting from social sciences approach. If you also have the title in undergraduate thesis, proposal skripsi, for example, please also you analysis, become the poor people by what is assisting or borrowing approach from one of the social sciences. Maybe you using approach from sociology, from economy, from political sciences, from law, from communication, and so on. Okay, I would like to make an example. Anwar Firdaus. Anwar Firdaus, for example, will study about the Islamic boarding school. Islamic boarding school is institution. So for this context, I think you good idea if you study not about the Islamic boarding school as institution, but the cleric or the Islamic scholars, the kiai, the ulama in that Islamic boarding school. And please, this figure, you analyze what his role, what his important maybe idea, his action, and so on. And when you explaining about the role, this figure, please you using or what is borrowing in analysis with the one of the social sciences, for example, maybe from sociology, from political science, from law, and so on. Okay, so I hope that your pool paper in one semester, one pool paper, okay, and also when you will what is presentation about your topic, firstly, please you choose about the historical event with familiar with your knowledge, with your historical knowledge. Okay, if you also have the title about the undergraduate thesis, skripsi, okay, please you choose that, but please match the people and analysis the figure or the historical event. In analyzing that figure or historical event, please you borrowing or approaching with the social sciences, maybe from communication science, maybe from sociology, for political science, for economic, and so on and so forth. Can you understand? So your obligation, your task in one semester is match the pool people, okay, between 10 until 15, what is 15 pages. But before you make the pool people, you will presentation your title in PowerPoint. But please, your title concerning of historical event or the historical figure, and please you analysis this historical event or historical figure by borrowing or what is approaching from social sciences. One of the social sciences, maybe you using the sociological approach, political science approach, economic approach, geography, and so on and so forth. Okay, do you understand, my student? Or any question before what is we will ending about this lecturing? Any question or any comment about your task? No comment. No question. Okay. If you understand about your task, your application, I think I give you the opportunity. I give you the time for collecting your title, for your what is PowerPointers or people until next week. Okay. So please you think again what kind of my title for poor people, uh, what the historical event or what the historical figure would like to analysis with approaching what with assisting from the social sciences. Okay. Uh, thank you very much, and we will switch our virtual lecturing from a Zoom meeting to a WhatsApp group. Please you make the brief comment or a short comment in a WhatsApp group related to my lecturing today. Thank you very much, my student. Hopefully you understand. Hopefully also you are good in health, success always. Always smile like me. Let's be ending our lecturing today by reciting together. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Bapak.
Okay, we will switch to WhatsApp group. Please you comment in WhatsApp groups in the bahasa Indonesia, never mind. In English also okay. In Sudanese language also okay. In Malay language also okay. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye. Give me to Alep from the spiritual meeting. So sorry.